At this hour, we have Brother Michael Whitworth, who is from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and has put together a very excellent program on helping people to be better Bible students and Bible teachers. He's going to be at Redland Road this Sunday to present the whole of his seminar. So you're welcome to come and hear that. It starts at 9 o'clock for Bible study, and then he will preach at worship, and then we will break for lunch for about an hour, and then he'll take from, what was it, 12 to 2:30?
12 to 3:30. Yeah.
3:30. So we will. We're looking forward to that. But today you're going to get a good snapshot of it, and hopefully you will consider bringing him to your congregation to do the same thing. So we're very appreciative of Michael and all that he has done, his writing, and this seminar and many other things. If you don't know about it, he has put out a new book on nature and pictures from national parks and so forth, and the focus is God's creation and the beauty of it, and I recommend that highly. He also is going to be taking groups of people, small groups of people, to these places that he has taken some of these pictures, and I hope to go on that one of these days. So we appreciate him being with us, and we give you the floor.
As he said, my name is Michael Whitworth, and for about the last 2.5 years, my full-time job has been conducting what I have called the Teaching Rocket Seminar. Done this over 100 times across the United States now, and have done this even internationally in New Zealand and Tanzania. And I have a third trip coming up in August to the nation of Fiji. I really enjoy doing this as mission work, and I will talk more about that here in a moment. But I've done this over 100 times across the U.S., and now we're averaging about 60 to 65 seminars a year. I do one on Saturday somewhere. I'll do another one on Sunday elsewhere. He mentioned I'll be at Redland Road on Sunday, but here later this afternoon I've got to catch a flight to Phoenix because I'm in Phoenix on Saturday and then fly back to Montgomery to be at Redland on Sunday. I want to talk very briefly though, and this is, if you'll forgive me, this is going to be, if you think, well, this sounded like a commercial for the seminar, well, you're right, that's exactly what I needed it to do. What I want you to take away from our time together is not just, hey, Michael thinks Teaching Rocket is great and he thinks we should invite him to our congregation, but also I hope that you walk away with a renewed appreciation for the fact that our teachers and our Bible class programs need to feel encouraged and appreciated. In my experience, the Bible class program in most churches is almost like the redheaded stepchild, where we pay lip service to its value, but we really don't do much to show the people that are involved that they matter a great deal to us. And so whether you bring me or someone else in or you do something else, I want to perhaps plant the thought in your mind of what is your congregation currently doing to show that their teachers are deeply valued by the congregation. But let's talk about some of these things for a moment. This seminar is for anyone who wants to be not only a better Bible teacher, but also a better Bible student. This is something that I preach often in these seminars, that to be a better Bible teacher, you must be a better Bible student. And whereas I started out 2.5 years ago billing this as a teaching training seminar for adult teachers and teen teachers, I had people tell me quite often in the early days, well, you know, we teach children and we got a lot out of this. And then I had elderships tell me they had wished they had built it as when they heard the material, they wished they had built it as a Bible study seminar to encourage more people to attend, because roughly half of what we talk about in Teaching Rocket has to do with better Bible study habits, teaching people to study on their own. One of the things I talk a lot about is that good Bible study habits are not intuitive. You don't come out of the waters of baptism instantly knowing how to best study the Bible for yourself. And as teachers, we ought to be modeling for people how they can study the Bible for themselves. But this has a dual role in serving not only students but also teachers. There are three main ways we do the class or do the seminar. One is to do the first session on Friday evening and then the balance on Saturday morning from 9 to noon. Don't do very many of those as you would think. The two ones that we do the most of is on Saturday from 9 to 2, and then of course on Sundays, it's the bulk of it is Sunday afternoon, but I typically teach a combined Bible class. I preach a special Bible class emphasis sermon, and then the balance of the seminar is done that afternoon. It was about 2 years ago, right before I was here 2 years ago to speak on the lectures, it was 2 years ago that I was asked to do my first seminar on a Sunday. All of my seminars up to that point had been on Saturday, but I was asked 2 years ago to do it on a Sunday afternoon, and I remember thinking, this is not going to go well. This is a terrible idea, but that's what they wanted, and you know what? If they were still writing the check, I would do it on any day of the week for them. But I just thought to myself, this is a terrible idea, mainly because I am deeply convinced that the Sunday afternoon nap is sacrosanct. And you're never drowsier after lunch than on Sunday. I don't know how that works, but I've just learned I've got to have my Sunday afternoon nap. Well, lo and behold, we had the highest attendance we'd ever had for a seminar on that Sunday afternoon. The congregation averaged about 360 to 370 for worship, and we had over 100 people stay that afternoon for the seminar. And since then, it has consistently been the case that our highest crowds are on Sunday. And the reason I think that is, obviously I don't know for sure, but the reason I think that is because people are used to being at the church building on Sunday. And so it is not an interruption in their normal weekly schedule to be there on Sunday. It is an interruption for them to be there on Saturday, possibly. And so that's kind of what we do. Now, I will mention this. If you're interested in bringing me in, here's what you need to know about these schedules. If you are wanting to open this up to as many congregations as possible and get people from other churches to come, Saturday is your best bet. Saturday is your best bet because of that. But if you want to keep this for your congregation and maximize your people coming to the building, it needs to be on Sunday. That's kind of what we have found. Roughly, the averages as far as attendance, you will see about 25% of your worship attendance stay for the Sunday seminar. If you average 200 on a Sunday morning, you'll see about 50, maybe 60 people stay that afternoon for the seminar. If it's a Saturday seminar, sometimes it's as low as 10% of your worship attendance. If you average 200, you'll have about 20 to 25 there on a Saturday. However, I was at Hoover, the Hoover congregation just south of Birmingham. I was there about a week and a half ago, and they average about 310, 320 for worship, and they had over 200 stay that afternoon for the seminar. So sometimes we have outliers like that. In Teaching Rocket, we cover 5 different topics, of course, across 4 sessions, and I want to talk briefly about those. Now, first of all, we start out with the goals of the Bible class program, and we really ask the question, what exactly are we trying to accomplish when we come together for Bible class? I make the joke, I ask people to raise their hands, and I'll do it here. How many of you were raised going to Bible class on a regular basis as a kid? Okay, the vast majority of us did. So I would imagine that for many of us, even if we're working in churches, but for many of us, when 9:30 rolls around on a Sunday morning and we're not in a Bible class somewhere, we kind of feel like we're sinning, unless we were providentially hindered. But as I have worked with over 100 churches in the last 2.5 years with this seminar, the vast majority of the congregations I've worked with have never asked anything remotely related to the question, what exactly are we trying to accomplish with our Bible classes? Most churches, their attitude towards Bible class seems to be, well, we've always done Bible class, and we think Bible class is a good idea, so we can plan to continue doing Bible class, but they really haven't thought through exactly what are our objectives, what are we trying to accomplish. And over the course of about an hour and a half in that first session, we go through the 3 main goals that every Bible class program needs to have, that we're teaching people how to think about the Bible, how to learn about the Bible, and how to live out the Bible. And then we talk about that in the first session. The second one is just a basic lesson on preparation and delivery of a lesson. I take people kind of step by step, the nuts and bolts of putting a lesson together, and then some important things about delivering it. When I served for 12 years in local work in churches in Tennessee and in Texas before I went out on my own, and the vast majority of that time was spent in the pulpit. My heart is in pulpit ministry, but for 2 years I served as an education minister, and obviously my primary responsibility was to recruit new teachers. And as I would talk to people about their willingness to teach, and as they would say things like, No! No! Under no circum? No! One guy told me, he said, Michael, the day I teach a Bible class, you'll be able to hear the sizzle of the snowflake against the eternal flame. Okay. As I would talk to people about their willingness to teach, and they would say no, and I would ask why, because I'm a jerk and won't take no for an answer. The number one objection that surprised me the most was they had no idea how to prepare a Bible class lesson. They had never been trained to do that. And that was where the seeds of Teaching Rocket were first sown in my mind, the realization, we do not train our Bible class teachers in the church. We offer them no training whatsoever. In fact, in the seminar, I joke that in the church, we have two requirements to teach a Bible class. Number one, have a pulse. Number two, don't be a complete and utter moron, and we'll fudge on one of those if we're desperate enough, okay? And so I take people through the nuts and bolts of, here's how you prepare a Bible class lesson from scratch and then deliver it. We just talk about some basic Prependale ideas. The third session, and this is actually the session I do in the combined Bible class when I do the seminars on Sunday, and I'll do it at Redland Road on this Sunday, but this is a session called Keys to Better Bible Study. Again, this is just a really good basic lesson on, here are some things that you need to know to enrich in your study of the Word of God. These are some things that are going to help you get a lot more out of your Bible study, and especially if you're teaching, it's going to help you generate fantastic content for your lesson. And the 6 keys that I provide are read repeatedly, read thoughtfully, read patiently, read inquisitively, read prayerfully, and read purposefully. But that's the session we go through in Bible class. Number 4, we deal with classroom dynamics. Classroom dynamics. At the beginning of this session, I go back to talking about, I served as an education minister. I would try to recruit new teachers. The number one objection I got from people overall was that the reason why they didn't want to teach was that, for lack of a better way of putting it, they were afraid of the classroom. They were afraid of the role of teacher. They were too intimidated by it. And after I thought about it, I realized it made some sense. I realized all of us are probably afraid to teach one age group or another. In other words, some of us will teach kids, we would never teach adults. Some of us will teach adults, we would never teach kids. And ain't none of us want to teach teenagers, and that's why we go out and hire youth ministers. So I try to get people to understand that the role of teacher in the classroom, especially, you got to think about teaching kids is probably not as intimidating to some people if they are around children on a regular basis. But teaching an adult Bible class can be an intimidating exercise, especially when you know for a fact there are people in the audience that are a whole lot smarter about the Bible than you are. That can be incredibly intimidating. And so what I try to get people to recognize is that this is not a role that you need to be deathly afraid of. And we address some of the things that often make the role of teacher seem to be very intimidating. And what I try to do in this session is, again, step them through the dynamics of the classroom so that, and I outline these 3 goals for the session at the beginning of it, I tell them I want them to feel comfortable, competent, and confident in the role of teacher. And when we go through the dynamics of the classroom, I want them to know that's what I'm trying to accomplish. And then finally, we end with a session on what I call the teacher's spiritual life. I open up with James chapter 3, verse 1. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. All of us have known individuals, preachers, teachers in the church that were very effective, had very effective ministries, did a lot of good for a long time, and then they fell into some grave sin. Maybe they were restored, maybe they weren't, but it was too late, the damage was done. As much as possible, I'm going to try and keep that from happening to any of us. And so that's why we have this final session on the teacher's spiritual life. Why is Teaching Rocket so important? Why is Bible class so important? Many of you are familiar with this phrase. It did not originate with Ira North, but he's the one that I think probably made it so famous in our fellowship. As the Bible class goes, so goes the church. My heart is in the pulpit, and I from the time I was 4.5 years old, I have wanted to be a preacher. My daddy was a preacher. His daddy was a preacher. I tell people I'm a 7th generation member of the church, which means I'm an expert in potlucks. Okay, I have wanted to preach since I was a little boy, but as much as I believe in the importance of the pulpit in the life of the church, I believe it is Bible class where we see most life change happen in the hearts of people. Bible class is where we see more change in people's hearts, molding them more into the likeness of Jesus than we do in a sermon. In other words, and those of us who are ministers, we know this on some level. We know that someone is going to be a stronger Christian if they are in Bible class consistently versus just in worship. And I know, we put a lot of pride into crafting our sermons and so forth, but I think that there is more life change that happens in Bible class than in worship. And so I try to get elders especially to recognize that every dollar spent on the education ministry of their congregation is a better investment than a dollar spent in almost any other arena. We've got churches that are spending obscene amounts of money on new buildings and new facilities. I am not anti-building, I'm not anti-new facility, okay? But they could have taken a fraction of that money, poured it into their Bible class program, and seen more numerical growth and certainly more spiritual growth. I am convinced that in the Bible class, that is where we are so excellently equipped and prepared, set up to accomplish our Great Commission objectives. Okay? If you want to think about what really the church should be about, accomplishing the Great Commission in the world, we have no other platform and arena to accomplish those objectives than in the Bible class program. And so again, I believe this with all of my heart. If a congregation's Bible class program is healthy and robust and convicting and engaging, then the congregation is going to benefit strongly from that. Whereas we've been in congregations, we walked into Bible class, the entire class was there in a doornail. We wanted to, put a screwdriver through our eyeballs because the class just would never end. And there wasn't any energy, there wasn't any rhythm, there wasn't any focus. I think that's important to recognize. Something that I talk about in the first session of Teaching Rocket. Do any of you have a background in or have friends or family in the Southern Baptist Church? Anybody? Friends or family in the Southern Baptist Church? Okay. So my best friend growing up is Baptist. He's a young adults pastor at a Baptist church in Jackson, Mississippi. About 10 years ago, we were having a conversation about church attendance, and he told me something that shocked me, and I told him something that shocked him. He asked me how many we would have in our Bible classes relative to our worship attendance, and I told him, and he gave me the answer. So many of you know this already, but the average ratio of Bible class to worship attendance in the churches of Christ nationally is about 55 to 65%. In other words, if you average about 200 for worship, you're going to have somewhere between 115 and 130 for Bible class, and that's almost consistent across the board. Did you know that in the Baptist church that number is inverted? And they will have more for Bible class than they have for worship. Whatever they have for Bible class, for Sunday school, they'll average about 75% of that stay for worship. And I think it's because they figured out that the Bible class is where people connect emotionally with one another. If you know some good, faithful Southern Baptists, you know that they do life with their Sunday school group, with their Sunday school class. They'll stay in the same Sunday school class with the same people for decades, and that's their social world, okay? And so I think it's important that we recognize that the Bible class is where we can accomplish so much that the church is supposed to be about. Who can benefit from Teaching Rocket? I've identified 4 or 5 main types of churches that need to seriously consider bringing me in for a seminar or bringing somebody in to do something for their Bible class program. Number 1, churches with less than a 65 to 70% Bible class attendance ratio. In other words, if you think about the ratio of your Bible class attendance relative to your worship attendance, if it's less than 65 to 70%, then you need to do something about your Bible class program. Because again, the average in the church is 55 to 65%, and I don't want to be average. I want to be above average. I know of congregations that are as high as 70 to 75%. Now, obviously, the lower the worship attendance, we get into churches that are, say, 100 members, 100 on Sunday morning, they're going to have a higher Bible class attendance ratio just because you've got fewer people in the sampling size. But honestly, if you've got a congregation that's less than 65% Bible class worship attendance ratio, then you need to seriously consider bringing somebody in to pump up your Bible class program, because it is possible to increase that number. There are other things that you can do to increase that number. I have seen all the statistics, and yes, moving Bible class to after the worship service does increase that a little bit. You've still got people that leave, okay? I've always found that interesting, but that is something you need to know about is 55 to 65% is the average ratio nationally, and if you are at that number or lower, if you're under 65%, you need to seriously consider bringing somebody in to pump up your Bible class program, because I can tell you that is you think about, in medicine, what is its vitals, what are the vital signs? That's an important number. If you're under 65%, you need to do something about it. I know churches that are even under 50%, and that is abysmal. But you've got less than half of your people coming for Bible class on Sunday morning, and that's something you need to be concerned about. Number 2, churches that are struggling to recruit new teachers. I know of some churches that they have teachers running out of their ears. They are incredibly few and far between. Okay? We do not have a lot of churches in our fellowship that just have more teachers than they know what to do with. It seems to be a pox on all our houses that we are consistently trying to beat people over the head to get them to teach. I know of many congregations, the day, the Sunday before the new quarter starts, the Wednesday before the new quarter starts, the day the new quarter starts, they are still begging people to teach classes, and they're having to draft people or ask teachers, hey, I know you taught this past quarter, I'm going to need you to teach again because we don't have anybody for this class. And it is incredibly frustrating when we have that problem. This is one of the biggest reasons why I started the Teaching Rocket Seminar. This one right here is because I have found, and some of you noticed this in other arenas of church world, but I have found that in church world, if you make people feel as if they can do something, they will give it a try. And for our purposes here, if you make people feel as if they have had just a modicum of training, they're willing to give it a try. And then once they give it a try, they realize, well, this isn't too bad. I can do this. And suddenly they're doing something they never thought they could do. And so what we have found is that this is a seminar that gets a lot of people interested in possibly teaching because they feel like they've had some modicum of training. If you are struggling to recruit new teachers, you need this seminar. You need to bring somebody in to do some sort of training for your people, and you're going to see an increase in your teachers. Number 3, churches that are considering abandoning Bible class altogether. I have run into those congregations that their numbers are so low and they are so horribly discouraged and dejected about their Bible class program, they're thinking about just completely scrapping it for one reason or another. It breaks my heart because when I see that, I know that, I'll speak plainly. When a congregation has gotten to that point, I don't know that much can be done to save them. It's not just the Bible class that they're about to close down. They may be closing their doors permanently, and they don't know it, but they're on death's bed as far as their congregation's life is concerned. But I believe in a God that is very good at resurrections, and so I tell churches, if you're thinking about abandoning the Bible class program because you feel like nobody's coming, nobody's teaching, nobody's willing to teach, then you need to do something to try and pump it back in, because you never know when some little spark's going to catch on and start a wildfire, and that's what you want in this particular case. But I have run into some churches that they were considering of just closing down. The first one to go is always Wednesday night. We're just not going to get together on Wednesday night. We only have maybe 6-8 people show up. I'm of the opinion, if you've got 6-8 people showing up on Wednesday night or Sunday morning or whenever else, that's 6-8 people that are going to be blessed by teaching God's Word, okay? I'm going to feed whoever's willing to come, however many it is. But I've known the churches that they just get discouraged, they want to close it down because they think a completely empty building is better than a building with barely anybody in it. So that's sad, but that's where they are. Number 4, churches that do not have engaging, convicting classes. These are the 2 words that I use most often in talking about what our Bible classes should be. Number 1, they need to be engaging. A lot of our Bible classes are not engaging because this is the posture that I see most people taking, especially in the auditorium adult class. I tell people in my seminars the auditorium is where Bible classes go to die. And there's always one person that is super offended by that statement, and it's the person who teaches the auditorium class in that congregation. But I see a lot of people, especially in an auditorium class, they come in and they start doing this right here, and they don't move for the entire Bible class. They never say anything, they never make a comment. They just do this the entire time. And if you've ever been in education, you know that that posture is the kiss of death, because you are dealing with a passive learner. And so a lot of our Bible classes are simply not engaging. People aren't drawn to them. The other one is they're not convicting. I feel frustrated that for a lot of us, our Bible class curriculum in our adult Bible classes for decades, for generations, was a lot of surface level Bible literacy stuff. And I'm all for Bible literacy, but it was true, false, fill in the blank, multiple choice, stuff that you could easily get by making a surface reading of the text, and there was nothing convicting in that Bible class. There was nothing said or taught where people walked away saying, I've got something wrong with me, and it's called sin, and I need Jesus. If we're never convicting our members of sin, and then we wonder why our churches aren't growing spiritually, why we are wrestling constantly with sin in the camp, well, that might be one reason. And at the very beginning of the seminar, I used the kind of the dual idea of Some classes, I talk about the two main paradigms that we have for Bible classes. The first one is, well, we're here to teach the Bible to people, and that philosophy says we're going to give you as much Bible as we possibly can in the 40 to 45 to 50 minutes that we have together, and if it sticks, great. If it doesn't stick, not our problem. We're just here to teach the Bible to people. The second approach says, well, we're here to teach people the Bible, and this one is a very people-centric idea, whereas the previous one is a very Bible-centric idea. People love to come to these types of classes because they get to come and open up and share their feelings and their emotions and their opinions. But the problem is that the first bell will ring, signaling there's 5 minutes left in the class before there's ever a thus saith the Lord mentioned. And you've been in some of those types of classes where there's a whole lot of opinions being shared, but not a lot of Bible being taught. And so when I talk about engaging and convicting, I don't think these are mutually exclusive. I don't think they're mutually exclusive at all. I want my Bible classes to be engaging. I want people to enjoy being there, but I also want them to be convicting. I want them to hear a thus saith the Lord plainly taught in that class and know exactly how it applies to their lives and exactly how Christ is calling them to change their lifestyle in order to be more conformed to His will. Finally, number 5, churches that have a lot of new members but no net growth. And it's not rare. It is not rare that I run into churches who have this problem. They seem to have no problem getting people to place membership, but they're not seeing any significant net growth because they've also got people walking out the back door. People falling through the cracks. But commonly I've heard it referred to as we've got a back door problem. We've got people coming in the front, but we've also got people leaving out the back, and we don't know how to close that door. What I want elders to understand is that the best way to get people more assimilated into the life of a congregation is to get them in Bible class. Because think about it, those of us who are ministers, we know that if someone's going to Bible class on a regular basis, we don't have a real fear that they could just drop off and stop coming to church altogether one day. If you've got, Joe and Jane Smith, and they come regularly for Bible class every week, they've been members at your congregation for 10 years, and it seems like they have never missed a Bible class unless they were traveling or sick. They've never missed a Bible class, and then suddenly they stop coming completely. You know that something serious has happened. If they just completely stopped coming at all, worship and everything else, you know you've got a serious problem on your hands. We know that people that come to Bible class are naturally more assimilated into the life of the church. Even people that are horrible introverts, if they come to Bible class, they're still assimilated into the life of the congregation. And so what I want churches to recognize is that if they've got this so-called backdoor problem, then pumping up their Bible class is a great way to try and solve that. Now, it's not the only thing you need to do, but it's a great start to address that problem. What are some of the results of Teaching Rocket? In other words, if you brought me or someone else in to do this type of seminar, what are some results you could reasonably expect? Now, before I continue, obviously, I would hope it goes unsaid, but I'm going to say it anyway. These are not money-back guarantees. Okay, I can't promise you that you're going to experience every single one of these results. However, these are results that I have seen in other congregations where I've been at. Not every church experiences these. As we know, but often fail to put into practice, as we know, sometimes it depends all upon the follow-up. If there is no follow-up, you cannot reasonably expect any of these results. But if you take what is done on that seminar day and then try to put some of these things into practice, you are going to see some of these results. Let's talk about it. Number 1, you are going to have more people willing to teach. I did a seminar at a congregation in South Georgia in November of 17. I came back for part 2 of Teaching Rocket. I'll talk more about that in a moment. Came back for part 2 of Teaching Rocket a year later, last November. They had doubled the number of people that were willing to teach Bible classes. Now, they went from like 8 to 17, but still, they doubled their number. Okay, now I can't promise you're going to double the number of people that are willing to teach, but if you brought me in and you got 6 people who were now willing to teach a Bible class who previously were not willing, if you got 10 people, whatever number, how valuable is that to you that now you've got 6 people that are willing to teach that they just steadfastly refused beforehand? You are going to see more people willing to teach a Bible class. Number 2, you will see a greater zeal for the Bible class program. And I think that, in my experience, this is probably the one result you can almost guarantee it will happen. Again, this is not a money-back guarantee, but if there's one result I can pretty much guarantee is going to happen, I've seen at the base level people walk away super excited about the Bible class program again, when it might have been decades since anybody was excited about the Bible class program in their church. But people are just excited about it, and they've got a renewed energy and focus, and wow, I want to do better. And they see why Bible class is so important in the lives of Christians. And so we see that increase in zeal. Number 3, current teachers feel appreciated and encouraged. I'm telling you, some of the hardest working people we have in our congregations are our Bible class teachers, and we do virtually nothing to show them appreciation or encouragement. And it's almost comical to me, in a sad way, it's comical to me how easy it would be to show them encouragement and appreciation, and yet we won't do it. And sometimes I get told, well, that would be too expensive, and I lay out the cost for people, and they realize, oh, well, maybe it's possible. I see churches blowing $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 on Vacation Bible School. They could have done a teacher's appreciation banquet for less than $500, and probably have done more to bless their education program. Now, I'm not saying VBS needs to be torched, but you see what I'm saying. Sometimes we have our priorities out of whack, and we've got the money and we didn't know we had the money. But I tell churches, you need to be investing in your teachers. Have a policy that if you teach 2 quarters out of the year, we give you a Bible reference book, say of $20 to $25 value, just something that you can add to your Bible study library at home. Honestly, if I were the Pope of the Churches of Christ and everybody just did everything that I told them to do, that's a joke. That's a joke. Don't write me letters. If I was Pope and everybody did what I told them to do, I think our Bible class teachers ought to be paid. And I know that brings into its own little certain problems. But I know of churches, especially in Middle Tennessee, it's a thing. They pay their song leaders. I don't know of a single church in Middle Tennessee that doesn't pay their song leader. Why don't we pay our Bible class teachers? Why don't we have a policy where if you teach a certain number of quarters a year, and I'm not talking about a ton of money, I'm talking about $100 a year to a Bible class teacher. Just something token saying thank you for this. But I'm telling you, even if it's just a teacher's appreciation banquet every year, there's a congregation in Cookeville, Tennessee. Every year in late April, they have their teacher's appreciation banquet. It's at a local steak place, and I'm not talking about super expensive, not the Palm, but just a local, mom and pop steak place. They rent the back room, and everybody knows that the meal that night is on the church's dime, and it's you and plus one if you have taught that year in the Bible class program. People really look forward to that event. They don't have problems getting people to come to that event and sit there and eat a free meal on the church's dime. They give out a Teacher of the Year award. I could tell, churches will sometimes bring me in to speak at a teacher's appreciation banquet. I could see the energy in the room. People were super excited to be Bible class teachers because they saw how they were honored and appreciated. That congregation probably didn't spend more than $500-600 on that appreciation banquet, but it paid all kinds of dividends. But teachers after this seminar often they see that the elders took the time and the effort to bring me in to do this seminar, and they feel appreciated and encouraged as a result. People that have been teaching for 30 or 40 years in the Bible class program come up to me and thank me for the seminar and how much they got out of it, and they were super encouraged by it. One lady told me, she said, I've been teaching children's classes for 43 years. I got a lot out of this. And so again, teachers will feel that. Number 4, you will see an increase in Bible class attendance. Again, I can't promise this, but the majority of churches that I've done the seminar at, very soon after the seminar, they saw an increase in Bible class attendance. One of the reasons is that in my Sunday seminars, in my sermon that morning, I preach a Bible class emphasis sermon that encourages people in a very positive way. If you aren't coming to Bible class, here's what you're missing out on. And I talk about 3 things that God gives us in Bible class that we really can't get anywhere else in our Christian life. But also, if you're just increasing the quality of your teachers and the quality of their teaching, it's going to have that trickle-down effect where it's a more positive experience for the students in the class. Number 5, you're going to see a decrease in membership attrition. Again, the back door problem. You've got people coming in the front door, but you also got people leaving out the back door, and we're really not growing net-wise. I think you're going to see a decrease in that attrition rate. Again, you're not going to be able to eliminate it completely, but as you get people more emotionally connected in the Bible class program, they're going to be more assimilated in the life of the congregation, and they're going to be less likely to walk out the door one day for no good reason. Finally, number 6, professional teachers benefit from this seminar. Professional teachers benefit from this seminar. I do about 8 seminars a month on average, 2 every weekend. I do about 8 seminars a month, and in roughly 3 of those 8, I will have a person come up to me at the end who teaches in the local school system, and they will tell me they got a lot out of this seminar. Had a lady in Hopkinsville, Kentucky back just in February 17th. February 17th, I was in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. I had a lady come up to me and she said, I'm going to be very honest with you. I was planning to go home and do laundry this afternoon, but I decided to stay for the seminar, and I'm so glad that I did. She said, I've been teaching for 35 years in the public school system here, and I really got a lot out of this. That really makes me feel good, and especially when I'm super discouraged doing this seminar, that really pumps me up because I have no background in education. I went to school to be a preacher. My mama teaches first grade, but she started doing that after I left home. I have no background in education. I have no training as a public educator. But I am very encouraged by the fact that people who are in education professionally and have been professionally trained, they've got graduate degrees in education, they still see a lot of good stuff to take away from this seminar. And I'm thinking to myself, if they see a lot of good to take away from this, then how much more those of us who've never been to some sort of education training event in their lives. My favorite compliment came from a lady, and I only know what she was saying because of my mom. She said, I got more out of this than I do the in-service my principal makes me go to. In-service being the ongoing training that teachers have to go through in the summer and so forth. Let's talk a little bit about what I cover in Teaching Rocket Part 2. Part 2 came about because I had a lady come up to me about a year in saying, well, this was good. You always want to hear that. This was good, but how come you didn't talk about it? And she named a couple of things, and I said, well, ma'am, did you really want to sit through a 10-hour seminar? Well, no. We simply don't have time in the first part of Teaching Rocket to get to everything that I want to talk about. And so I created Part 2. This is a seminar that churches bring me back for Part 2 anywhere from 6 to 18 months after I've been there for Part 1. But here are some of the things that we talk about. We have 5 topics over 5 sessions. The first one, understanding students' needs. Understanding students' needs. This is a session that is very valuable when it comes to the issue of application. You have teachers that are struggling to make application in their lessons. They can teach the text, but then they don't know really how to apply it specifically. We talk about what are some things you need to know about the needs of children, the needs of teens, the needs of adults, and again, that session is very valuable when it comes to helping people develop a knack or a feel for making application of the lesson. The second one is deeper Bible study tips. Deeper Bible study tips. This is a session especially, and I'm going to be singing Jimmy's tune here, this is a session where I go into depth about the differences in the different genres of literature in the Bible. Obviously, we would teach Genesis, Psalms, Daniel, and Romans very differently because they're very different books. Most people, in fact, I would say 99% of our people have never been exposed to the conversation of there are different types of literature reflected in the Bible, and here's how you teach each one. Jimmy, would you agree with that? I mean, that's a virtually a non-existent conversation, especially outside of our schools, and I don't even think it's talked a lot about in our schools, but I do a session on that. Number 3, organizing your lesson. What are some ways that you can organize your lesson so that you're making sure you're hitting all of the boxes, checking all the boxes? Developing objectives, making application, stepping people through the text. Number 4 is something that I think is super valuable in Teaching Rocket, the psychology. Did you know that a child learns differently from a teen who learns differently from an adult? We talk about those differences, why they matter. This is a very interesting conversation for people that have always taught kids, but they'd like to try their hand at teaching adults, or they've always taught adults and they would like to try their hand on teaching small children. The preachers that are in the room, have you ever taught a children's Bible class, say with your wife or some other? You ever taught? I'm telling you, it is a challenge to go from teaching adults so regularly, both in class and in sermons, and then suddenly you're asked to walk into there and teach 3rd graders. That'll challenge you, and it'll humble you to some degree. So it's important to know the differences because you can get so much in a rut teaching one, so used to it that you need to stretch and grow in other areas. Finally, the last session is what I call stage crafting. We go into a lot of detail about eye contact, body language, posture, gestures, and then we end with the do's and don'ts of PowerPoint. And that's something that I see a great need for. I can count on one hand, and have fingers left over to pick my nose, I can count on one hand the number of Bible class teachers I've seen do PowerPoint really well. Okay? Just not a lot of people know how to use it well, and so we talk about those things. And then very recently, as in just a week and a half ago, I did the very first ever Teaching Rocket Part 3 in Lubbock, Texas. And it's a very simple concept. In Part 3, we actually have a hands-on learning lab where it's a lot less structured than these other two. But basically, we develop a lesson on Numbers 13 using these 3 words to kind of step us through everything: head, heart, hands. The head part is doing the research, researching the lesson, developing the material. The second one, the heart, making application in your lessons. And then finally, the hands, giving them an action item and then generating discussion in the group. But after talking with several people that had me in for Part 2, asking them, okay, what would you like to see in a possible Part 3? They said, we'd like to have a session where we actually put all this into practice and we sit down with the text and we just develop a lesson. That's exactly what we did. At the end of Part 3, everybody that had been in the class was able to teach a lesson either to children, teens, or adults, or all 3 if they'd really been paying attention. But they had a lesson developed for all 3 of those age groups, and they had an idea of what they would have on their PowerPoint when they walked into the room. So it was very much a hands-on experience. Just if you're curious about the cost of the seminar, I typically ask for $1,000 plus reimbursement of travel expenses. But for churches under 100 members, I give them a discount, because what I have found is that churches under 100 members are the ones who are most in need of this type of thing. And then also for churches that bring me in say June, July, December, those are some months that I have a hard time scheduling seminars because people traveling and then the holidays. I give them an even deeper discount because usually I can't schedule anything anyway, so trying to help them out. But what are some questions that y'all have about this or just about the education program and teaching specifically?
You're talking about rewarding teachers. We've found the greatest reward teachers we have, and most of our teachers are school teachers anyway. They'll ask somebody help us paint the room. Yeah. Or we need this material. Well, the elders don't ever think about it. Deacon, who happens to be the preacher too,
right,
they'll go to him and he said, well, I'll have to talk to the elders. And one of them was, I got to tell her, she's married to an elder. She said, don't waste your time. Said, just help us do it. So they'll come in and say, will you paint my furniture? Well, you think you'd give them $100,000.
And that goes to show you exactly, the bar is set very low for what will qualify as encouragement to our teachers. Sometimes they feel like all they've heard over the years is no to anything they've requested. I think elders should be in the habit of going to, especially the teachers who teach very regularly, maybe 3-4 quarters out of the year. I think elders should go to those teachers regularly, and one of them should ask them, what do you need from us? What do you need to be a better teacher, to have a better classroom experience?
We got one elder that he's the newest one. His wife is a retired teacher, but he visits every class every so often to see what's going on, and then the ones that's teaching, they feel more comfortable to come to him and ask him, or they'll go to his wife and say, would you ask him to do something? So, and it works. But our problem is, just like you said to start with, before the next lesson's due for the next quarter, is finding a teacher. But we're limited in the number of people. Right. Because a lot of them are like me, they got too old.
All right, well, I hope that in our time together, more than anything, again, you're going to walk away with just a realization of our Bible class programs are set up to be of tremendous use and good for our churches and to bless us in many ways. But just like everything else, it really depends on how much you're willing to invest in it. And I firmly believe that every dollar spent on our education program gets us closer to accomplishing the Great Commission than a dollar invested in any other program arena of church work. And so I would encourage you, if nothing else, you walk away believing that the education program in your church deserves increased investment beyond what it already has, whatever level that's at. Any last final comments, questions? Random observations about how good looking I am? No? All right, fantastic. You're dismissed. Thank you.
Do you have a website?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a website?
Yes, ma'am, I do. I'm sorry. Teachingrocket.org is the website. And I've got literature up here. I've got flyers, postcards, business cards up here for everybody. But yes, the website is teachingrocket.org.
Thank you for your attendance. We will be moving to Lester Chapel for the next session. We want to again thank Michael for being here and the wonderful job that he does with his efforts. So let's move down to Lester Chapel. We'll start at 3:30. So we got about a 15-minute break.